In the shadows of smokestacks, along the frost-bitten alleys of 19th-century Chicago, Polish immigrants carved out more than just survival. They built a way of life from the humblest ingredients. They arrived with calloused hands, tear-soaked letters from home, and family recipes older than the borders they'd crossed. In tenement kitchens no bigger than a boxcar, with flickering stoves and coal smoke curling beneath leaky windows, something extraordinary happened. Food became more than food. It was memory, it was rebellion, it was hope tucked into dough and boiled in silence. These weren't meals, they were declarations. Flour, cabbage, onions, these built more than stews. They built identity. The clatter of pans, the scent of roasting fat. This was the soundtrack of resilience. One beet soup, one sausage link, one cabbage roll at a time, the Polish heart anchored itself to new soil. And as families gathered tired but unbroken at dinner tables sunk beneath factory grime, their food whispered, "You're still here. You still belong, stay to the end, because these aren't just 25 foods. They're blueprints of survival, plates full of history. A century later, they still simmer with smoke, stories, and something sacred. Pierogi z kapustą I grzybami, dumplings of survival. Walk down Milwaukee Avenue in 1895, and the aroma could stop you cold. Frying onions, wood smoke, and scratch dough on a kitchen table. Somewhere above a butcher shop or near the rail yards, a mother was rolling out dough made from the last bit of flour, crafting pierogi stuffed with sauerkraut and mushrooms. And these weren't the holiday delicacies we know today. These were Tuesday night saviors, humble, filling, and fiercely made. The cave of her hands pinched each dumpling shut like a vow. Cabbage was always cheap. Mushrooms foraged near the edges of forgotten lots or scavenged from city dirt. The dough, paper thin, wrapped the filling like linen on a relic. When boiled, then browned in butter, if you had enough, they emerged golden, steaming proof that something good could still be made. Kids called them Polish pockets. Fathers took them to the mills in lunch tins, and for a moment, wrapped in hot dumpling air, the clang of trains and soot of factories disappeared. This wasn't just food, it was defiance, dough raised like a flag. Kiełbasa wiejska, the smoke that built a neighborhood. Before Chicago's skyline rose in steel, Polish downtown smoked with another sort of pride. The smell of kiełbasa from backyard smokehouses curling above alleys and rooftops. On payday, men pooled coins to buy pork trimmings, garlic, cracked pepper. The meat was minced by hand, crammed into casings made from resolve, strung up in sheds beside chopped wood and hope. Oak fires burned slow. The smoke crept through stairwells and down laundries, saying what words couldn't. We're doing all right. This was more than food. It was a neighbor's gesture, a family's fuel. On Sundays, sausage links swung from windows like banners. A slice topped with coarse mustard and a crust of rye could carry a laborer through 10 more hours of clang and dust. Even now, every local deli that stocks a link of farmhouse kiełbasa carries more than meat. It holds decades of pride, community, and grit. That smoky perfume was once the price of survival. Today, it's the scent of tradition standing tall. Zasmażana kapusta, the humble queen of the tenements. Inside cramped kitchens layered with ice on the window glass, cabbage reigned supreme. Cheap, plentiful, and enduring, it showed up in pans almost daily. But when times bit hardest, Polish mothers made something magical. Zasmażana kapusta, sautéed sauerkraut braised slow with bits of bacon, pan-sizzled onions, and meaty mushrooms. If luck held out, the alchemy wasn't in the ingredients. It was in the long hours at the stove, stirring, softening, letting the sour mellow and the smoke deepen. That smell, part vinegar, part bacon, part something ancient, rolled down narrow halls like a winter hymn. It brought kids running. It meant warmth. It meant home. Sometimes served with torn rye, other times eaten straight from the pan. It was a meal made from the simplest things, but heavy with comfort. This dish didn't flaunt, didn't need to, because in every bite was a life lesson taught from stovetop to storybook. You don't need money to create a feast. You just need something to cook and someone to cook for. Bigos, the hunter's stew that never ended. They called it bigos, But in Chicago's Polish flats, it was better known as the everlasting pot, a stew that never officially started and never truly ended. Kept on stoves forever simmering, it was made of sauerkraut and cabbage, scraps of pork one day, sausage ends or beef trimmings the next. Smoke, acid, and memory swirling in each slow bubble. You didn't eat bigos the day it was made. It needed time to speak. Its flavor deepened day by day like a story passed between mouths. Some said a father's strength came from the pot, thick as wet canvas. Others said mothers kept families whole with it when everything else was falling apart. Sundays unveiled its perfume, tart wine, warm cabbage, and the echo of firewood hauled through the Polish woods. Bigos couldn't be finished. You added to it, fed it like a tradition, let it carry you. This wasn't soup, it was sustenance in extended form. The tale of an immigrant people ladled out with pride. Gołąbki, cabbage rolls of hope. When money vanished and plates echoed, Polish mothers didn't panic. They remembered. Gołąbki, cabbage rolls, had fed generations before, and now, in a cramped Chicago kitchen with low light and high hunger, they would feed again. Blanched cabbage leaves cupped a simple filling, rice, sweet onions, and if fortune smiled, ground pork. The rolls were folded with care, tight but gentle, like love in edible form. Simmered in tomato broth or pan drippings, the scent alone could hush chaos. In rooms with creaking floors and tired feet, it smelled like safety. Crowds gathered around chipped tables, cheeks pink from steam and winter. For a stolen moment, the city's weight lifted. These weren't just vegetables and starch. They were bundles of history, rolled by hands that remembered Europe's wars and America's shadows. A head of cabbage turned into Sunday dinner, a mother's embrace, a survival song. They said you could taste the fear and love baked into every bite, and it was true. Because even when apartments were bare, belief wrapped in cabbage leaves could still bring everyone home. Borscht, the beet soup that carried home. In the dead of a Chicago winter, when the wind cut through brick walls and soot hung low over alleys, Polish families turned to something bright. Borscht, beet soup, red as rubies, served with mushroom-filled dumplings that looked like little ears. It wasn't just a meal. It was remembrance poured into a bowl. Its glow could silence the grayest day. The broth, steeped from beet peels saved weeks in advance, simmered with hope. Market mushrooms were chopped fine, kneaded into dumpling dough by hands that still remembered forests and frostbitten trails. The taste? Sweet and earthy, like biting into the homeland itself. Borscht wasn't reserved for a feast, though its color felt like ceremony. On Christmas Eve, it looked holy. But even midweek, the smell of it, the iron twinge of beets thick in the air, meant dinner would matter. Children plunged bread crusts into it like treasure hunters. Aprons stained red, fingers sticky, hearts full. It wasn't just soup. It was Poland in a ladle. It was warmth, tradition, and memory served hot in a world trying to make you forget. Kluski śląski, little dumplings, big comfort. A sack of old potatoes in Polish downtown could travel further than $20 if you knew how to handle it. And the women who made kluski śląski, round, fluffy dumplings with a thumbprint in the center, were masters of that magic. They weren't showy. They were soft, chewy, simple as clouds, and they saved lives. The dough was basic, mashed potatoes and flour molded into tiny moons. Boiled till they floated, sometimes dressed with butter, sometimes kissed with gravy or wild mushroom sauce. They filled bellies like warm stones in a cold world. Kids popped them into their mouths one by one like candy, watching mist fog the kitchen windows as snow fell outside. When meat was gone, Kluski made the table feel rich. When the factory checks came late, a pot of these could stretch the hunger another day. And every so often, amidst the scraping of forks and clatter of spoons, someone would sigh and say, "It's enough," because somehow it really was. Love, labor, and Kluski, comfort made edible. If your heart feels connected to these stories, don't stop here. Subscribe to be part of more such soul-stirring tales. Tell us in the comments, what was your great-grandparents' favorite dish? Maybe your memories live in one of these recipes too. Żurek, the sour soup that saved Sundays. Sunday mornings in Polish tenements didn't begin with church bells. They started with the vinegary steam of żurek rising from the stove. Made from fermented rye flour, this soup was a trick of patience and frugality, sour as old secrets and twice as comforting. A jar of starter sat all week, bubbling away on the windowsill like a living promise. Come Sunday, it was stirred into a pot with potato chunks, carved sausage ends, and spare boiled eggs. The kitchen filled with the smell of bread turned to steam, hearth turned to broth. The taste? Tangy, smoky, warm, a bowl that tasted like you were being pulled in from the cold. It was said you could measure a family's luck by how much sausage floated in the bowl. But even the humble versions, all broth and starch, held their heads high. For the weary crowd spilling in from 12-hour shifts at the steel plant or stockyard, that first spoonful was more than food. It was homecoming. It was Sunday. It was survival you could sip. Kiszka, the blood sausage of survival. In a neighborhood where nothing was wasted and everything had value, even blood became a story worth telling. Kiszka, blood sausage, was the dish that turned scraps into strength. When a pig was slaughtered, everything was used. Organs, fat, barley, spice, and the darkest ingredient, life itself. Mothers seasoned it carefully, boiled the links, then crisped them in hot pans until the skins cracked open like old bark. The smell? Earthy, iron-rich, a little wild. Neighbors poked their heads from doorways just to confirm, "Kiszka tonight?" To outsiders it might have seemed grim, but to those who stood with empty wallets but full hearts, it tasted like survival. High in iron, high in fat. It was food that kept men on their feet during back-to-back shifts at the yards. Food that remembered where you came from and what it cost to stay standing. Kiszka wasn't exotic. It was essential. The meal whispered an old truth through its smoky flavor. Everything has value, even what others throw away. Plaki ziemniaczane, the golden pancakes of the poor. When the cupboard looked like a ghost town and payday seemed miles away, Polish mothers reached for their old faithful, the potato. Grated, salted, dropped into hot fat. Suddenly, what seemed empty became enough. That's how plaki ziemniaczane, potato pancakes, saved the week. They fried humble scraps into crispy golden circles, crackling at the edges, soft in the center. The smell alone lifted moods and quieted hunger. It drifted through paper-thin walls, past dozing babies and roaring brokers, the scent of effort sizzling into triumph. Some served them plain, others slathered with sour cream or a spoonful of applesauce if money allowed. But most days toppings didn't matter. It was about warmth. It was about survival. And somehow, dipped in nothing but salt, they still tasted like a party. These were pancakes in name only. They were shields against hunger, edible joy wrung from desperation. In a city built on men's backs and women's work, a pan of plaki meant a full day could end sweetly. Pączki, the sweet escape. Even when money was tight and life was hard, there was at least one day a year when sweetness demanded to be served. That day was Pączki Day, just before Lent, and it woke the tenements with a smell you couldn't ignore. Fried dough, sugar, and something audacious, joy. Before sunrise, mothers were already kneading the soft elastic dough. Flour coated the tables, eggs were cracked with ceremony, and if they could stretch the budget, a bit of sugar or butter was worked in. Once fried, each golden round puffed up like a promise. A spoonful of plum or rose jam in the center made them whole. On that morning, the flats weren't just crowded, they were festive. Powdered sugar floated like snow. Children waited in line with sticky fingers and shining eyes. For one amazing hour before ration books and rent notices crept back in, the entire building tasted hope. Pączki weren't just donuts. They were defiance, a reminder that no matter how hard life gets, there is always room, even just one day, for something sweet. And when you bit into one, warm and fragrant, it didn't feel like a break from suffering. It felt like a return to something soft and sacred. Kopitka, the hoof-shaped taste of home. When there were just a handful of potatoes left and the pantry shelves stared back in silence, mothers didn't panic. They boiled water. What came next was kopitka, dumplings shaped like little hooves, molded from mashed potatoes, flour, and grit. They were quick, humble, and heartwarming. The dough was rolled out like thick ropes, then sliced on an angle and dropped into boiling water until they bobbed to the surface, soft and ready. A little butter, fried onions, maybe leftover gravy turned them into a meal worth remembering. That warm scent traveled fast, through paper-thin walls and underground stairwells. Mothers struck gold again, and children shouted, "The little horses are racing!" Fathers packed them for work because they could be eaten with fingers, warm or cold. There was no secret to kopitka, just simplicity done right, but in those tenement kitchens they were miraculous. A bowl of these could silence hunger and soften hardship, because sometimes the taste of home isn't plated with wealth. It gallops through the room on the back of love and flour. Buckwheat, the Christmas memory in a bowl. When the snow rose high and bells echoed through frozen streets, Polish families gathered not just for warmth, but for memory. And memory had a taste. It was called buckwheat. Poppy seed cake or layered dessert, spun from stories and stirred with sugar, milk, and silence. Every part was sacred. Mothers ground the black poppy seeds by hand until they shimmered like ink. They mixed them with milk, honey, and raisins, folding them gently between slices of stale bread or pastry dough. The kitchen filled with peace, that sweet, rich smell that signaled Christmas had arrived. It didn't matter if the milk was borrowed or the bread crumbly. What mattered was the ritual. Children circled the table, wide-eyed and whispering. Every bite was rich with meaning. This was not a dessert born of abundance, but of long-held belief that joy deserved a place, even when nothing else did. Buckwheat wasn't about celebration. It was the celebration, tucked into a chipped bowl. An edible tradition shared after midnight mass, passed down through recipes that never needed to be written, just remembered. Żurek, the cheesecake of celebration. When life dropped something good, a wedding, a birth. Surviving another hard year, Polish immigrants tuned the kitchen for music without instruments, the making of żurek. Cheesecake, yes, but not the polished bakery kind. This one was homemade from farmer's cheese, eggs, sugar, and time itself. Mothers whipped the cheese until it was smooth like silk. Folded in ingredients lovingly, baked it slow so cracks could form, evidence it had lived through heat and come out perfect anyway. The smell called to children in the courtyard, who came running just hoping the top had browned. Sometimes it was topped with raisins, sometimes jam, but most of the time it arrived plain and honest. That was the point. Sweetness wasn't in the garnish. It lived in the occasion you shared it for. In a city made of factory bells, cold wind, and worn shoes, a slice of żurek was more than dessert. It was proof that joy deserved space at the table too. And that love, folded into soft cheese and sugar, could survive any storm. If you're still watching, that means your roots are deeply tied to this journey. So do one thing. Hit the subscribe button now and drop a comment with the dish that touched your heart the most so far. We'll read it. Maybe our stories are more alike than we ever knew. Fasolka pokluski, beans and dumplings for the working man. In the steel-gray grind of Chicago's factory district, there wasn't time for beauty. But there was always time for fasolka pokluski, beans and dumplings, the warm wall between a man and collapse. It didn't look like wealth, but it tasted like strength. White beans were set to soak early, swelling through the morning. They simmered slowly in iron pots, absorbing flavor from onions and whatever lingering bit of bacon or smoked sausage could be found. The dumplings came last, pillowy, soft, and made to soak up every drop of the earthy broth. It was food ruled by function, but folded with care. Fathers returned home coated in steel dust, weariness fresh on their faces. One spoonful was all it took, the kind of heaviness you wanted. It filled the cracks in the spirit. There was no story on the surface. Just a pot, a bowl, a ladle? But to each family that sat with it, this dish wasn't a recipe. It was recovery typed in starch and steam. It was the invisible line that connected hands split by labor back to the kitchen that still waited for them. Pierogi ruski, dumplings of comfort and memory. No Polish kitchen in Chicago felt whole without pierogi ruski. These weren't made for parties or holidays. These were everyday blessings. Dumplings stuffed with mashed potatoes, caramelized onions, and tangy farmer's cheese. Soft, hand-pinched, and boiled into silent grace, They stretched scraps into something sacred. Mothers made them by the dozen, with muscle memory, not recipes. Their fingers flew fast, flour dust dancing in the air like winter. The tables groaned with rows of ready pierogi, tiny parcels of comfort waiting to hit the pot. The filling was never fancy. Last night's potatoes, a handful of cheese stashed away for Sundays. But once they hit butter in a hot pan, they turned golden, quietly triumphant. Families circled chipped plates, watching hot steam rise like a prayer. For children, it was love made edible. For parents, a pocket of peace you could afford. These dumplings weren't plentiful because times were good. They were, in fact, protection against days that were about to get worse. And that's why even now, every Polish deli keeps them on the menu. Because tradition doesn't fade. It fries in butter and keeps showing up exactly when you need it most. Śledzie w śmietanie, the sailor's supper on land. Before freezers, before packaged meats, before convenience, they had herring. Salty preserved herring. And when the weeks were long and joy was missing, it came back in the form of śledzie w śmietanie, herring cut thin, cured with care, dressed in sour cream and raw onions till it snapped awake on the tongue. They soaked the fillets in water overnight to tame the salt, then lovingly sliced them into silver slivers. The tang of vinegar, the punch of black pepper, and the coolness of cream made it vivid, sharp, and unforgettable. It stung in the best way, just like the wind off the Baltic that many had left behind. It was eaten cold, alongside soft rye bread, plain boiled potatoes, or sometimes a pickle if someone had jarred one in time. A sip of beer was optional, but appreciated when coins allowed. This was a food of ocean memory and immigrant simplicity. To many, it was a bitter comfort, a taste of a faraway homeland they'd never visit again. But in Chicago's Polish kitchens, it survived not just as supper, but as a story told between bites and bones. Ryba po grecku, the immigrants' fish feast. Ryba po grecku, or fish in the Greek style, had nothing to do with Greece and everything to do with resourcefulness. Polish families turned simple fried fish into a feast by dressing it in soft stewed vegetables. Onions, carrots, tomato paste, celery, and whatever the cupboard offered. It looked festive. It tasted miraculous. Fried fish fillets, golden and flaky, were covered in thick orange-red sauce, sweet from carrots, bright from tomatoes. Served chilled or warm, it revived the table like a centerpiece brought to life, especially on Fridays or during Lent, when meat was no option. This dish rose to the occasion. Catholic tradition shaped the menu, but the mothers shaped joy from what they had. Even today, this fish doesn't wear a crown of luxury, but carries the scent of something far deeper: pride. The kind woven through old aprons and whispered across cracked tables. It proved that dignity could be diced, stewed, and served up warm, even when your pockets were empty and your hands shook from days at the loom. Crocchietti, the crispy rolls of celebration. By Sunday, when the house had eased its breath and the week's noise subsided, something careful began in the kitchen. Crocchietti, paper-thin crepes, filled and rolled with wisdom, coated in breadcrumbs, then shallow fried to gentle perfection. Crispy outside, savory joy within. The filling varied: mushrooms, cabbage, or scraps of meat tucked away from earlier in the week. But the ritual was constant. Each crepe cooked one by one, spread on the counter like parchment ready for its story. Mothers hummed without thinking, flipping them with practiced wrists, the scent of fried onions trailing through the house like music. They were served with broth ladled from a different pot, or a dollop of sour cream if fortune smiled. But mostly, they were the joy. Practical, yet luxurious. Weekday leftovers wrapped in Sunday magic. Crocchietti bridged miles between past and present, Poland and America, hardship and hope. And that first bite, crisp-shelled and steaming, didn't just say, "This is good." It whispered, "We made it through another week." That was reason enough to celebrate. Rakushi's jabłkami, the sweet scent of Sunday mornings. Before the city stirred, before shoes were laced or scarves wrapped, Polish mothers were at the stove, slicing apples and whisking old batter. That meant rakushis jabkami, apple fritters, were on the horizon. And every corner of the tenement would soon smell like cinnamon, sugar, and care. There was nothing complicated here. Flour, egg, milk, apple. The batter was spooned into hot oil, puffing into golden discs, surrounded by crackle and warmth. If there was enough left in the tin, a sprinkle of powdered sugar came last. A dusting of joy, if you were lucky. Kids lingered near the kitchen, barefoot and blinking, hands hovering just close enough to steal the first one off the plate. The air, it smelled like a holiday even if it wasn't one. These weren't morning delicacies. They were edible love notes. After 6 days of coal dust, aching knees, or standing in bread lines, rakushi made Sunday count. They added sweetness to the end of survival's recipe and made sure children remembered one thing above all else. Happiness could be fried in butter and served before church. Macarons capusto, the poor man's pasta. In the late 1800s, pasta was considered food for the wealthy, or the Italians. But in Polish tenements, where hunger didn't discriminate, families made their own version, macaronzi capusto. Noodles with sautéed cabbage and onions, so simple and hearty that a few cents worth could carry a week. The noodles, homemade or scavenged, were boiled tender. The cabbage, sliced thin, browned slowly and fat with crackling onions, and the occasional sprinkle of sugar to sweeten the bitterness of both vegetable and life. It sizzled in silence while children did chores and men napped before night shifts. A pinch of salt elevated the dish. A speck of bacon turned it into pure comfort. But even without meat, it warmed bellies so fully that no one complained. The sound of cabbage frying mixed with laughter, forks clattering, and the tap of a spoon against a tin pot. To a child, it didn't matter that this was peasant food. It meant the family had made it through another day. And to a mother, it was proof that even in scarcity, something golden could emerge. Boiled noodles, burnt onions, and the will to keep going. Smażony carp, the holiday fish of faith. Every Christmas Eve, the sound said it all. A sizzle in hot oil and the murmur of ancient prayers. That meant smażony carp, fried carp, sacred and symbolic, had hit the stove. It wasn't an indulgence. It was tradition, soaked in waiting and ritual. Men bought the fish alive from barrels set up on cold Milwaukee Avenue corners. They carried them home in pails that sloshed onto frozen sidewalks. In tight kitchens, the carp waited in bathtubs before being cleaned, dusted in flour, and dropped carefully into a frying pan, crackling with lard. There was no meat that night, only fish, rye bread, and resolve. Plates were chipped, voices hushed, candles lit. In a single bite, the old world met the new. Even children understood it meant something. That carp wasn't just food, it marked time, migration, belief. To this day, you'll find Polish families honoring that meal. Fried fish on Christmas wasn't about taste. It was about the journey, about holding on to the one sacred ritual you packed when you left everything else behind. Kasza gryczana z grzybami, buckwheat and the forest's gift. Before quinoa ever touched a Chicago plate, Polish households had kasza gryczana z grzybami, roasted buckwheat with mushrooms. It was ancient, earthy and humble, a dish passed down from forest paths to factory kitchens, spooned into pots with reverence. Buckwheat groats, toasted till nutty and brown, simmered with butter and onions. Wild mushrooms, brought from market stalls or picked from wooded edges, gave it depth, that unmistakable scent of bark and rain. As it simmered, the kitchen filled with a warmth that didn't just chase cold, it remembered a country left behind. There wasn't much glamour here. It wasn't plated, it was piled into bowls, but the flavor curled around the tongue like a lullaby. Fathers said it gave them strength for the steel mills. Mothers said it healed hunger with grace. It was the taste of endurance, not flashy but full. And long before anyone called food soulful, Poles boiled forest into grain and found home inside a humble spoonful of kasza. Babka ziemniaczana, the potato loaf that fed the block. In the shared stairwells of Chicago's Polish downtown, you could tell who was baking babka ziemniaczana, potato loaf, before you reached their door. The aroma drifted heavy and sure, Grated tubers, softened onions, and crisping edges, all rising in battered pans. It started out of necessity. A way to stretch small, starchy things into a full table. Potatoes were grated till knuckles bled. Eggs were worked in. A dash of pepper, a scrap of fat if available. Then into the oven. What came out was less a loaf, more a monument. Golden crust, soft center, slices thick enough to feed everyone. They ate it hot with sour cream or cold with pickles the next day. A mother might swear the flavor deepened overnight, but the truth was, it never lasted that long. At the first cut, the family crowded in. It could last you all week or vanish in an hour. Either way, it proved something simple. In the right hands, even the plainest food could become a neighborhood event, warm, fragrant, and unforgettable. Walk the same streets today, past the bakeries on Milwaukee Avenue or the corners lined with amber sausages in smoky glass, and you'll smell what's left behind. Not just food, but legacy. Because every pierogi, every sour soup, every humble cut of cabbage carries more than flavor. It carries the heartbeat of a people who crossed oceans with little more than a suitcase and a need to belong. In cramped kitchens without language, without savings, they built more than meals. They built community. They stirred love into poverty, turned scarcity into tradition, and taught cities to taste with their hearts. These weren't just recipes, they were blueprints. Quiet declarations that where you are matters less than what you make from what you have. A century later, that steam still lingers in doorways. That scent of burnt butter, boiled beets, smoked garlic, it's still here. Not preserved in museums, but kept alive in kitchens, whispered from one wooden spoon to the next, because these dishes never disappeared. They just moved into new hands, new homes, and new stories still being told.